Okay, now we're going to learn our last two derivative rules. The first one is the derivative of a product. So in this example, we have the derivative of f times g. Now in this case, the order doesn't really matter. Basically, one of them is going to be f, and the other one is f prime. And then on the other piece, you'll have a g and then a g prime. Now I want you to notice there's a plus in between those two things. So let's try an example. I have two functions here. I have e to the x, and I also have sine of x. So I can put e to the x here, and then the derivative of e to the x over here. Then I can put sine of x over here, and then the derivative of sine of x over here. Don't forget, you must put a plus sign in between. Okay, I want to point out one thing in the formula. You'll notice that if one of them is a derivative, then the one right next to it is not the derivative. So we don't want to put two derivatives right next to each other and two functions right next to each other. Okay, so here you'll notice we did not do the derivative of this one, but we did do the derivative of this one. And we have our plus sign. Again, we did not do the derivative of this one, but we did do the derivative of this one. Okay, let's simplify. The derivative for sine is just cosine. The derivative for e to the x is just e to the x. And that's it. That's our final answer. I want to point out that no simplifying is required, but some people will take out an e to the x. So if you wanted to, you could do that. Okay, in the red box, that was the product rule with two things, but there's actually an easy pattern. You'll notice when there are only two things, you write fg plus fg. On one of them you do the derivative of f, and on the other piece you do the derivative of g. Well, we have a similar pattern. If there are three things, you just write all three. So fgh, fgh, fgh. On one of them you're going to do the derivative of f. On another one, and it doesn't matter which one, you do the derivative of g. And on the last one you do the derivative of h. Again, the order doesn't matter. Now we could show this by treating gh as one piece. So we're doing a product of two things. The derivative of, first one's f, and the second one is gh. If I was to do this, I would have this. Now I want you to notice that I did the derivative of f on this one, and I'm going to do the derivative of gh on this one. How do we do the derivative of gh? Well, it's basically this rule right here. Okay, the derivative of gh is going to be g prime h plus gh prime. Okay, we can distribute the f on each piece, and now we're done, and you'll see this is the exact same thing that we have in this box right here. So you can see when there are two things, you just write fg twice. On one of them you do the derivative of f, the other piece you do the derivative of g. When there are three things, you write all three of them three times. And on one of them you do the derivative of f, the other one you do the derivative of g, and the other one you do the derivative of h. Okay, last rule, we're going to do the quotient rule. So we're doing the derivative of a function on top, we're calling it f, and then a function on the bottom, we're calling it g. This one we have to be a lot more careful about. The order is extremely important. This derivative is going to equal the bottom, which is g, times the derivative of the top, minus the top, times the derivative of the bottom, all divided by the bottom squared. Now let's go ahead and do an example of that. So in this example, sine of x is our top. It's kind of like your f. And e to the x is the one on the bottom. That's kind of like your g. Okay, so we're always going to start with the bottom. Just like if you were building a house, you would start with the foundation, which is the bottom. So our bottom is e to the x. So we'll start with e to the x. Now we have to do the derivative of the top. The derivative of sine is just cosine. Okay, then there's a minus. Then I'm going to put the top, which is sine. Now I have to do the derivative of the bottom. That'll be e to the x. and then all divided by the bottom squared. The bottom is e to the x, so I'll put e to the x squared. Now I'm writing e to the x squared like this because I'm going to be able to factor an e to the x out of the top and cancel it with the bottom. So if I take out an e to the x from the top, I would get this. Okay, now you can see that we can cancel one of the e to the x's from the top and the bottom. And that's our final answer. Now remember, you don't have to cancel an e to the x on the top and the bottom. If you want, you could just leave your answer like this. There is no simplifying required on the AP Calculus test. Okay, this is a kind of a tricky example because we have the top is two things. Let's have a look. When we do the quotient rule, we always start with the bottom, so we're going to start with an h. Then we have to do the derivative of the top. Okay, I'll do that later. I'm just going to write derivative of f times g. We have minus. Then we have to put the top, which is f times g. Then the derivative of the bottom, so that would be h prime. All divided by the bottom squared. Okay, let's do some simplifying. I need to figure out this derivative right here. Okay, that derivative is going to be f g prime plus g f prime. Again, the order doesn't matter. You could do f prime g plus g prime f. Okay, let's write the rest. Okay, I just want to distribute this h on both pieces and then I'll be done. Okay, and that's it. That's our final answer. Okay, here's another example where we're trying to do the derivative of x to the x. We don't have a rule for that. So what we do is we just say that y is the same thing as x to the x. We write that right here. Y is equal to x to the x. And now derivative of y, which is y prime, is going to be our final answer. How do we get y prime? Well, first we do ln of both sides. That allows me to bring this power down. You see it down here. Now I can do the derivative of both sides. Because we know the product rule, we can now do this type of derivative. The derivative of x times ln of x. Okay, let's do this derivative. You have the first times the derivative of the second plus the second times the derivative of the first. The derivative for ln of x is 1 over x. The derivative of just x is just a 1. On the left side, we're doing the derivative of y. You'll notice it's the wrong variable. If it was the correct variable, it would just be 1 over y and that's it, and we would be done. Because the letters don't match, we have to put y prime. That's the chain rule. Okay, I want you to notice that this is x over x, and we're writing it as a 1. Now, why does x over x equal 1? Well, it's because x cannot equal 0. How do we know that? Well, just look. We have an ln function. If we have ln of x in there, then that means that x has to be greater than 0. So this piece just gives us a 1. Obviously, 1 times ln of x is just ln of x. Now remember, our final answer is going to be y prime. So that means we got to get rid of this stuff. So we multiply both sides by y, and all of this will cancel. Just get y prime on the left. Now we do have one problem. You cannot have y in your answer. Remember, we're doing the derivative of x to the x. So to have a y in there doesn't make any sense. So if you remember that y is x to the x, you can trade the y for x to the x, and then you're done. Final answer is in that box. Okay, let's look at a few examples from your homework. This one here just means f prime of 8 plus g prime of 8. And you can get that from the table. Here are your f prime values, and here are your g prime values. And we're looking for where x is 8. That's this row right here. So f prime of 8 is just going to be 8. G prime of 8 is just going to be 9. Final answer 17. For this example, it's going to be the product rule. So you can write it as fg prime plus f prime g. Again, it's when x is equal to 8. When x is 8, we're looking at this row right here. F of 8 is 7. G prime of 8 is 9. F prime of 8 is 8. And G of 8 is 5. So we get 63 plus 40, and that's 103. Let's do a couple more. Okay, this is the quotient rule. Remember, you always start with the bottom. So you have the bottom times the derivative of the top, minus the top times the derivative of the bottom, all over the bottom square. Okay, we can just plug the values in. G of 8 is 1. F prime of 8 is 4. F of 8 is 7. G prime of 8 is 9. G of 8 is 1. Okay, we can simplify this. Final answer, negative 59. Okay, here's another example. If h is the square root of g, then find the derivative of h when x is 9. Remember, the derivative for square root is 1 over 2 root x. And again, because we don't have an x, we have a g, we have to do the derivative of g, and that's the chain rule that gives you the g prime. Remember, we still have to plug in a 9. The g of 9 is 4, so we can put a 4 here. G prime of 9 is 9. So we get 9 over 2 times 2. Final answer, 9 over 4.